So today I am going to talk about an experience that I had many years ago that was a formative time in my life. I've had a lot of those, but I think it's a good illustration of how I, in my life, have followed this path of unfolding, and also a little bit about how that works in my perspective. So this is about when I became a vegetarian, and it was back in 1989, and my husband at the time had brought a book home he'd gone to a talk, and he came home with a book and a pamphlet. And the book was a book called Diet for a New America. It is a huge book. I mean, it's like this thick. It is all well documented. It's a labor of love by John Robbins, who was of the Baskin-Robbins fortune and fame, the son of the Robbins in that name. And he was raised in a lot of affluence and in a dairy family, and he wrote a book about what he learned about the meat industry in the United States, and it covered all these different points of it, from how it was affecting the earth based on farming practices for the feed and grazing, how it affected the environment based on clear cutting and things like that. It talked about how it affects our health by the things that are fed to the animals. I mean, it was just, I don't really want to go on about it because it's pretty intensive, and it was pole shifting for me when I read it. But to get to the part where I read it, first you have to understand that at that time in my life, I was 29 years old. I had three small children. My youngest was still like a toddler, and my oldest was in probably kindergarten and maybe first grade, but I think it was probably kindergarten. And so at that time, I had no concept of vegetarianism, really. I mean, I had a sister who was a vegetarian, but I didn't know much about it. And she never talked a lot about why she was a vegetarian. She was an animal lover, so I assumed that was it. But other than that, like, I wasn't into health food. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. The day that he brought the book and the pamphlet home, the pamphlet was from this talk. The pamphlet was a maybe 8 to 10 page document that gave a lot of highlights out of the book. It was called Realities 1989, and I still have it somewhere. I saved it. The book was daunting. I just looked at the book and kind of rolled my eyes, but the pamphlet was fascinating, and that was where it brought up all these different bullet points of what the book talked about, and I was really taken with it. And so there came a time when, wasn't much long after that, when I had the opportunity to spend a week, not really a week, like 5 days away from my kids and my husband at the time, to have like a little sabbatical, okay, to de-stress. And we had a house. It was my husband's grandmother's house that we had lived in for about a year and a half. But it was just standing vacant. It was up in the woods. It was on a lake up near Fox Lake. And this house was available, right? There was no furniture in it or anything, but it was a place where I was able to go and spend a few days away. And I was really excited about it, my husband was going to take care of, he had his parents helping take care of the kids and everything. So it was just going to be a really nice time away. And you have to remember, this predates the internet. It predates, or at least any massive internet use. I mean, computers even at that time were not really that common. And there were no cell phones. I had a rotary phone there at the house, and I was in an area, it was pretty somewhat desolate because it was a vacation kind of area. And so during the winter months, and I feel like this was probably late winter, early spring, people weren't up there except for anyone that lived year round, and it was not many. So I go up there into this quiet place, and I bring that book with me. And I've got make a bed on the floor. Brought sleeping bags and stuff, made myself a little bedroll on the floor, and I burned incense. I just reveled in this quiet time, and I started reading this book. The book took me probably 3 days to finish, and I just would read it all day. And then in the morning, I would start reading again. And the book just blew my mind. And by the time I got to the last of the book, the end of the book, I'd already been, it was building and building. This book did not suggest that anyone needed to become a vegetarian. But what John Robbins said was that if people would cut back just 10% on their meat consumption, it could change the world. And this was particularly aimed at the culture in the United States at that time. Just so much meat. And he's like, you don't have to be a vegetarian or a vegan, just cut 10% back. But I came to realize there were enough points in there that were critical to me that I knew when I put that book down, I knew I could never eat meat again. And I was particularly struck by the realization, this really went right through my heart, that the toxins and hormones that were being fed to the animals, especially to cows, because they're so concentrated, that would translate through the milk supply when you're nursing. And I was so fierce as a mother, as a pregnant mother especially. I did not take even Tylenol, which they said was okay. I took nothing my entire pregnancy, 3 times. Because it was after the thalidomide baby kind of thing, and I thought, you know what, I'm not taking any chances. Even though they would say, oh, you can take Tylenol, which now is questionable, but I wouldn't take anything. If I had a headache, I toughed it out. If I got sick, I toughed it out. I refused to take any of that. I didn't drink alcohol. I was really fierce. I did pregnancy exercises. I was everything was all for this child that I was creating out of my very own body. And when I read in this book about how I was inadvertently giving all of these toxins to my babies, and my kids had already started showing signs of allergies, and I just thought, I felt awful, because I felt like I'd been taken for a ride, right? Because there's all kinds of things in there about why we were told what we were told, how it got into the school systems and stuff. It's all money related and whatnot. I don't want to get heavy into that, because I'm not heavy about any of that anymore. But the point is, it was all this stuff that just I let it sink in, and I just, by the time I put the book down, that day when I finished it, I sat that book down, I sat up and I thought, I can never eat meat again. I can never eat meat again. And it was so clear in my mind. There was no question. And I knew it was going to be a paradigm shift. And I didn't know what to do. And it was all those thoughts were coming to me while I was also coming to terms with, like I said, this idea about my parenting and about, it must have been toward the end of the book when they talked about that. But all I know is I put the book down and I sat there and I started to cry. And I cried hard. I just sobbed. I was just sitting there all by myself in this house in the middle of the woods on a lake, sobbing and sobbing. And in that state, so I'm trying to paint this picture of, in this moment, I was so filled with clarity around this pole shift I was embarking on, this paradigm shift, this new world I was gonna anchor. And I was clear that I was gonna do that, but I also knew that I had no idea what to do. Especially I'm up in the I'm in the hinterlands, and I'm like, I probably need to find a health food store, but we didn't have internet. There was no, I'm just gonna like look up health food store in what? I don't even think I had a phone book up there. But that's what we would have to do back in that day. And you couldn't necessarily look up health food store. It was just different times. But I had I would say of it, it's like every cell of my being was lined up in this moment with this deep question to God, to the universe, to the powers that be. What do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do. Help me. So emphatically, so powerfully. And it's this, the best energy I can think of to describe it is an epiphany moment, right? I'm in this moment where I am so 1,000% in this moment, rich, deep, clear, heart open, completely blown open, and feeling this question so strongly. What do I do? And in that moment, a voice came from right here behind me. Loud, clear, male voice, like someone was standing in the room with me, like someone was standing right behind me, which my very logical mind even was a little weirded out by. I'm sitting on the floor. So it's not like somebody could be standing behind me. It was like at my level, I'm thinking it was so weird. But it was like there was this voice, and the voice spoke. It almost sounded like there were more than one person. Like it was conversational tone, kind of thing. And what it said, I had no idea what it said, because the voice spoke in, it wasn't even another language that I could deter. It wasn't like the sound of someone speaking in another language. It was like it was garbled. It was like it wasn't a language. It was like, it's, I don't know how else to describe it. But it was really clear. It didn't scare me at all. It was like, felt like, wake up. Wake up. And as I heard that voice, I had a picture in my mind of an intersection in downtown Antioch, which that was the nearest town. I just saw this intersection. So this happened simultaneously, the voice and the picture. And I knew enough in that moment that I felt like that felt like a message. Why am I seeing this intersection? Here's where my great unfolding philosophy kicks in. Like, pay attention to what happens, what unfolds in front of you. I saw this image and I said to myself, maybe there's a health food store there. Like, this felt like a message. And I thought, and it was at a time in my life when it was kind of a little preposterous for me to imagine that I was getting a message from God, from Spirit. But I did feel like I should go, because what's the worst that can happen? There's nothing there. I felt that here's where the choice comes in, right? I saw what unfolded in front of me. I heard a voice. I saw a vision. And the choice was, as crazy as it seems, do I get in my car and drive all the way into town and just see if there's something there? Or do I write it off as that's crazy, that's nothing. That's just some goofy thing, that couldn't possibly be real. Okay. I chose, as I often do, especially since that time, I chose to take that drive. And I just I got myself dressed and got in the car and I just drove to the intersection. And I was very open, very wide-eyed. What's here for me? What's here for me? The drive there, remember, the next part of it is to release attachment to outcome. So when I said I'm going to go there, I did not say I'm going to go there because, there is a health food store, or there better be a health food store. I actually went there and said, there might be a health food store, or there might be something else that I need to see, or there might be nothing, but I'm just going to go and see if there's a reason I should be at that intersection. And so I went, and there was nothing at that intersection. Okay, I drove down the street exactly how I saw it. And I did feel like, maybe, okay, there's nothing here. And I wasn't upset or anything. I was like, okay. Although I was a little sad because I thought I really need help here. I turned the corner and there it was. That always makes me cry when I say it, because it was like, how do I want to say it? The little store itself was a sort of a dingy little health food store, because this was like, at the time, Antioch was like kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And it wasn't like, I want to say it had a little bit of a feel of like, oh, like when you see, I want to say like, the beams of light coming from it and it's all lit up and it's like, it's here, lights flashing, health food store. Energetically, it could feel like that, but it actually was this very unassuming little small health food store. It didn't have a lot in it, but it had what I needed. I bought some like booklets and I don't know if I got, I don't know. I got what I needed to get through my next couple of days up in that house that had no, I had nothing vegetarian in there. So I bought some different things, healthy foods and things like that. And I was able to get through my next couple of days before I went back home and really, dealt with the rest of all the fallout of that day that I became a vegetarian. I never made anyone else be a vegetarian, for the record, nor do I believe everyone needs to be a vegetarian. I have never had that attitude. I have very strong opinions as to why I chose this path. And that was, over 30 years ago now. That epiphany that I had, that experience that I had, has helped anchor for me personally the understanding that it is the right path for me. It isn't necessarily the right path for other people. I can't begin to know what anyone else's right path is. But I do know that the universe confirmed in that moment to me that this was the this was a good decision. We're going to support you in this. And I've come back to that over the years every now and then, and I do feel, I've also always felt like, you never know. I'm not attached to that's going to be forever and ever, but I think it will be. But I take fish oil now, and it's my one concession, and I take fish oil because I was given guidance from my own guides that was a good thing for me to have. But other than that, I still, for all these years, I haven't had any meat or fish or anything like that. But the point about that is, that was a very big and profound experience for me, but it is the perfect illustration of utilizing those principles of the great unfolding that, see what's presented in front of you. Make it. I could even take it further back and say, when I read the book, right? The pamphlet was presented to me, and then I made a choice. I'd like to read that book. I can't read the book here at home. I can't concentrate. I got 3 kids running around, very young kids. I didn't know what was going to come of reading the book. I did not believe for a second I was going to be a vegetarian. But I did just go into it with an open mind. And that day when I had that experience, this was presented to me, this thing that happened, and I made a choice to follow it. And I wasn't attached to the outcome, but I did find that the health food store that I was looking at. And then I just went with the next thing that unfolded, which was the health food store, so then I had to, go in there and decide, what am I going to buy? What do I need? I didn't, I kind of just kept staying in that open, receptive state. And that is the place to be as much as humanly possible. I believe that open, receptive state is key to living that bigger life, to living that more magnetic life, living the more fully yourself substantial life. So anyway, so that was one of I got a lot of other foundational stories like that, but that one in particular, clear, like crystal clear. And it was the only time I actually had that auditory experience, and my perception of it looking back on it, I came to realize that it was because I was in that moment of it's why I think that we can connect more with that source. We can get more wisdom from our own benevolent higher self and our guides by asking. And the problem is we often don't have as much, we're not as aligned as I was in that moment, right? So in that moment, the alignment was clear. Everything in me was on that one laser focus. I had laser focus, and I had a request, and I put it out there with every fiber of my vibrance, right? Every bit of my vibrance. And from that, I was able to break through that veil. they were able to connect with me in a tangible way. And, it was a long time ago, and I have not really pushed until now in my life, until this last couple of months. I have not taken the time to really diligently push for that level of alignment with my mind and my consciousness as I do now. And that's why I'm now starting to get more of a connection with my guidance, and And it's really beautiful. It is really beautiful. I'll talk about that in another video. Anyway, hopefully you found this to be useful. If you did, I would certainly love it if you would like the video, follow me on my Facebook group, my Facebook page, The Great Unfolding, on my YouTube channel, The Great Unfolding. Any little bit that you can connect with me will help me tremendously. I'm taking the slow route to unfold this work. If you feel compelled, I would appreciate that.